The Genoa Corporation sells two brands of wine glasses, plain and chic. The Genoa provides the following information for sales for the month of June 2011. We're given information regarding our total budgeted static contribution margin, total number of units to sell, our contribution margin for each unit of plain glasses, our contribution margin for the chic glasses, a total sales quantity variance, 2,200 unfavorable, and a sales mix 60% for plain, which means 40% for the chic classes. And we're asked to calculate our overall and our individual variances, sales mix and quantity variances for both types of glasses. So let's go ahead and begin with our Excel worksheet and fill in the things we know. First, we'll take a look at the plain glasses. We've got our budgeted contribution margins of $4 per glass. We've got our sales mix 60%. For our chic glasses, a $10 per unit contribution margin, a 40% sales mix. We've got our budgeted quantities of 2,000 total glasses. And then down at the very bottom, we were told that our total budgeted contribution margin was $11,000, and we had a $2,200 unfavorable quantity variance. So one of the first things we know that if we have an unfavorable quantity variance will be that the actual quantity of glasses sold is less than the budgeted. So this number here in the center is going to be $2,200 less than our static budget amount. So it's going to be 8,800. We need to back into our actual quantity, and then we're also going to want to need to figure out what our budgeted sales mix was. Let's go ahead and begin with our budgeted sales mix. We're going to do that with a little algebra. If we suppose that the budgeted sales mix percentage for plain glasses is given by y, then the sales mix for the chic will be 1 minus y, and we can set up a equation to solve for our total contribution margin. And that's going to be 2,000 total pairs of glasses times y, again the percentage for plain, times the $4 per unit contribution margin on plain, plus 2,000 total units times 1 minus y, again that's our sales mix percentage for chic, times our contribution margin for chic of $10. We set that equal to 11,000. And then going ahead and solving that equation, we can find that we get y equals 75%. So our sales mix for plain glasses is 75%, or for chic glasses we would say it's 25%. We could also do this using GoalSeek and Excel. Let's set up a small little worksheet here. Again, we have 2,000 total glasses. If it was 50% plain, 50% chic, we'd have 1,000 units of each multiplied by their contribution margins. Adding them up, we would get a total contribution margin of $14,000. But that's not what it was. We were told that it was $11,000. So we can use GoalSeek. Data, what if GoalSeek, we want to set what cell? This cell K71 to 11,000, because that's what we were told our static budget contribution margin was, and we're doing it by changing our percentage for the plain glasses, and we end up with 75%. Again, notice in terms of chic, I set this equal to 1 minus the 75%. So we've confirmed that our sales mix was 75% plain and 25% chic. Let's go ahead and add that information to our Excel worksheet above. So budgeted sales mix, 75% for the plain glasses, 25% for the chic. We still need to calculate our actual quantity of glasses sold. So that's going to be our next step. If we take a look at our total sales volume variance analysis, we calculated earlier that the center number had to be 8,800 because we had a $2,200 unfavorable sales quantity variance. So we can now use that number and our budgeted contribution margin to back into the quantity of glasses sold. 8,800 divided by $5.50 per glass, which was our average contribution margin. We get 16 1,600 for our actual quantity sold. So 1,600 for our actual quantity sold. Let's go ahead and make use of that. Coming up top, actual quantity, 1,600. And again, that's going to be all the way through here, actual quantity, actual quantity, actual quantity. Let's go ahead now and calculate our sales mix variances. We need to first calculate our flexible budget amount, 1,600 actual glasses times a actual sales mix of 60% times a $4 budgeted contribution margin. We get $3,840. We do the same calculations in the center column, 1,600 times 45 times 4, we get 4,800. And for our static budget, we get $6,000. And again, that would have been our 2,000 budgeted total quantity times our budgeted 75% sales mix times our budgeted contribution margin for plain glasses. In terms of our sales quantity variance, obviously it is going to be unfavorable since the actual quantities of 1,600 pairs of glasses, was less than the 2,000 that we had budgeted. And the amount of that unfavorable variance is the difference between the 6,000 and the 4,800. And again, the only difference there is the difference in quantities, the 400 fewer classes times 4 times 70%. For sales mix, our sales mix for the chic glasses, or rather the plain glasses, is unfavorable. And we would say it's unfavorable for the plain glasses because we had planned 75% of sales, but they only turned out to be 60% of sales. So we would have an unfavorable sales mix for our plain glasses. Again, that's going to mean, though, however, for our chic glasses, we will have what? A favorable variance, because the percentage for chic glasses turned out to be 40%, while we had only budgeted 25%. In terms of the amount for our sales mix variance, 4,800 minus the 3,840, we get a $960 unfavorable variance. Okay, our total variance, we're going to be the sum of two individual unfavorable variances, or simply the difference between the 6,000 static budget and the $3,840 flexible budget. And again, it will be unfavorable since the individual budgets variances were unfavorable, and simply because our flexible budget contribution margin was less than we had originally planned. So we've got an unfavorable variance there. So that's our plain glasses. We've isolated the variance. Let's go ahead and look at our chic glasses. For our chic glasses, again, actual level of activity for our flexible budget times our actual sales mix times our budgeted contribution margin, $6,400. Our center column will be 4,000, that's the actual quantity, times 25% budgeted sales mix times our budgeted contribution margin. Then finally our static budget amount, 5,000. Sales quantity variance, again, will be unfavorable because in total we had expected to sell 2,000 glasses, we only sold 1,600. So we've got a 5,000 minus 4,000, we've got a 1,000 unfavorable quantity variance with respect to chic glasses. In terms of the sales mix, again, we said the sales mix for chic was going to be favorable because it went from a budgeted amount of 25% of sales to 40% of sales. And our variance is the 64 minus the 4,000. Our total variance for chic glasses is going to be a difference between our $2,400 favorable and our $1,000 unfavorable variance. So it's $1,400. And again, we could have gotten that same $1,400 by comparing the difference between our flexible budget and our static budget. And since our contribution margin coming from chic glasses was higher for our flexible budget than our original static budget, again, we would say it's a favorable variance. Our total variance, though, notice, unfavorable for plain, favorable for chic, but which one's greater? The unfavorable for plain is greater, so our total variance down here will be simply the difference between those two, or we can go ahead and calculate it out. In terms of our total flexible budget amount, we need to be a little careful here. This really isn't the same contribution margin because we would have budgeted a different contribution margin had we known our sales mix had changed. So let's go ahead and get rid of that 550 and calculate what it would have been. We don't need to do this. In fact, actually, we'll do that a step later. We can get this amount as simply what? It's our flexible budget for sheet glasses plus our flexible budget for our plain glasses, 10,240. Our sales mix variance, the difference between these two, 1,440. And again, in terms of favorable or unfavorable, it is a favorable variance because we shifted to our higher contribution margin glasses, which were the chic glasses. We can see that if we want to back into this contribution margin, 10,240 divided by 1,600 glasses, our budgeted contribution margin would have been 640 had we gone with the higher sales mix. And we can see that down below. Originally we had a 550 per was our average contribution margin per unit, but again that was based on a sales mix of 75-25. Had we gone with a 60%, 40% sales mix, we would have had a lower average contribution margin per unit. I'm sorry, a higher average contribution margin per unit because we've shifted towards the higher margin product. So that's another way we could end up with that, calculate that average contribution margin per unit for the flexible budget amount. But since that wasn't asked for in the problem, we won't spend a lot of time on it. Our total variance. Our total variance will simply be the difference between our 11,000 static budget, 10,240 flexible budget, and that budget variance is going to be unfavorable because our flexible budget amount was less than our static budget amount. Again, the $10,240 flexible budget amount is less than our original static budget amount of $11,000, so we have an unfavorable variance of $760. So unfavorable of $760, and that's our problem for us. So notice we have unfavorable sales quantity variance because we sold fewer total glasses, wine glasses, than we had expected. We had expected 2,000. We only ended up at 1,600. Had our sales mix remained constant at that original budget of 75-25, we would have ended up with even lower revenue figures. But we had sold fewer glasses, but the good news was our sales mix shifted towards the higher margin chic glasses, and they produced a favorable sales mix variance, while the shift away from the plain glasses contributed or was an unfavorable sales mix variance. But overall, we had a favorable sales mix variance.